This way.
Right here?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. My bad.
No, where you want to sit?
Right here.
Okay.
Right here.
Mine. All right.
Terry, you want to this way.
Yeah, let's get out close. Good morning. I'm Attorney Ben Crump, and along with Attorney Rodney Barganier and Attorney Frankie Lee, and introducing Attorney Devin Jacobs, we have the honor of representing the family of EJ Bradford Jr., his mother, Miss April Pipkins, and his father, Mr. EJ Bradford Sr. We come here a year later with conviction to announce that EJ Bradford Jr. is gone, but he's not forgotten. His parents and his family in this community, along with the NAACP and the Outcast Voters League, the National Action Network, and people of good moral character, refuse to let them sweep EJ Bradford under the rug.
That's right. That's right.
EJ Bradford tragically was unnecessarily killed this time last year, and his family will not let his legacy be forgotten. In fact, today we're going to document that here in Alabama with the filing of a lawsuit against the police department and the people who are responsible for this unnecessary, unjustifiable killing of EJ Bradford Jr., shot in the back. You know, there are many things that could be said while we're filing this lawsuit on his anniversary to send a message that you can't sweep him under the rug, number one, because EJ Bradford life mattered. That was April's child. That was EJ's son. It mattered. Secondly, we're filing this lawsuit to bring about, you'll hear from Attorney Barganier and others, the specifics of the lawsuit, but it is really to bring about change so we don't have this shoot first, ask questions later by the police when it's a black or brown person. We demand equal justice and equal accountability, no matter whose children it is that are taken from them in such a tragic manner. And we won't change because, as we know, Thanksgiving is coming up next week, and that mall is likely to be packed again. Will the police employ policies and procedures that are in accordance with trying to prevent the killing unnecessarily of innocent people? Will they give verbal commands to crowds? We pray that the change is going to come about because EJ Bradford's legacy demands that change. We as a community demand that change. We as EJ Bradford's family demand that change. But most importantly, we as Americans demand that change for the safety and protection of all Americans, especially our young. Right now, you will hear from Attorney Barganier, and then Attorney Jacobs, and Attorney, and then you will hear from the parents, lastly, of EJ Bradford and the leadership of the NAACP. Then we will take your questions. Right now, we'll have Attorney Barganier come forward. We'll just step to the side.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Change is our theme. And we in this state all know too well about how lawsuits, particularly civil lawsuits, bring about change. And this process will start today. We'll file it in the United States District Court, Northern District, which is a block or so. And once that process begins, we'll be able to gain more evidence to show what transpired that night and what are the policies of Hoover Police Department as it relates to when you have a mall and you have a shot that's rung out. The one thing that we do know today that one thing we did get from the Attorney General's criminal investigations, that the only thing is that the officer admits he did not give a verbal warning. It is our understanding across this country that is policy. You must give a verbal warning. It is in our heart of hearts that we believe that had a verbal warning given to EJ Bradford Jr., he would have understood it, he would have responded, and he would be alive today. And that's the one thing you can't run from. We as lawyers, we as judges, we understand what an admission means, but we expect even more evidence to come forth as we begin this process.
And as Attorney Devin Jacobs comes to address you, when you look at EJ Bradford Sr., who worked with the police department, who served his country, when you look at April Pipkins, the fact that their son was a law citizen, everything in his history says that had that police gave him a verbal command that EJ Bradford would comply. They never gave EJ Bradford a chance. Never gave him a chance. And when you really think about it, EJ Bradford trying to help. And because the police shot first and asked questions later and violated policies and procedures, EJ Bradford is no longer with us today. Attorney Devin Jacobs will expound on that, and he has a former police background, and him and Attorney Frankie Lee have very unique experiences because they know what an active shooter scene is like and what should be done. So we're excited to welcome him to the legal team. Attorney Jacobs.
And it is my honor to represent this family in this most unfortunate and preventable tragedy that occurred. I'm Devin Jacob. I am a former police officer. I own Jacob Litigation, a national civil rights law firm. I go around the nation doing these cases, and I can tell you as a former police officer that this incident should not have happened. I've been on the street. I understand police tactics. I understand how these situations are supposed to be handled. This case is about the Second Amendment, really. Everybody in this jurisdiction should be afraid if they lawfully possess a handgun. The Constitution belongs to the people, and last I checked, that's all people. All people, black and white. And that means that if a citizen who lawfully possesses a handgun pulls out that handgun to exercise the right of self-protection and exercise the right to protect others from serious injury or death, they should not be shot simply by a handgun. That's an important point. This is not just about one person being shot in the Galleria. This is about everybody's right to lawfully possess a handgun in this jurisdiction. The AG's report is very telling. While the AG has the sole discretion to decide whether criminal charges are appropriate, he does not have the sole discretion to interpret or twist the facts. The fact remains that the very first duty of that officer was to protect all innocent people, which includes those lawfully possessing handguns and Good Samaritans and first responders who are responding to protect people who were in harm's way. EJ withdrew his weapon lawfully to protect somebody in that Galleria and was immediately gunned down for doing so. The AG focused on the fact that he was running towards where the shooting happened. That fact undermines the officer's account of what Aaron did, the criminal here. He fled. That's what criminals do. But EJ ran towards where the danger was to protect. That should have been a telltale sign right there that EJ was actually an innocent bystander trying to help out. The officer talks about how he took time to evaluate and see that this was an individual with a gun moving towards a person who was potentially in danger. All this time to deliberate that supposedly this had to be shot, but didn't take the split second to yell, "Police, stop," and to give EJ an opportunity to identify himself as friendly as opposed to foe. This officers violate national training standards, violate national policies and practices that are in place. And I've looked at some of Hoover's policies and practices. I've looked at some information that's come through Right to Know, and their practices, their policies are deplorable. They are below standard. And this case will cause change. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Jacobs. And Attorney Frankie Lee.
Good morning. Just a couple I would like to make this morning. Number one, here we are 1 year removed from EJ's murder, and we still do not know the name of the officer that pulled the trigger and murdered EJ Bradford Jr., shot him from behind. Number one, we live in America. We do not live in a communist country. We would think that that information would be readily available in the event that there was not something to be hidden or a cover-up. Number two, I too, just like Mr. Devin just suggested, was a police officer with regards to this murder were deviated from. So we're going to get to the bottom of what occurred, why it occurred, to change, and that's the purpose by which this lawsuit will be filed. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we make ready to hear from the parents, remember, they can't have it both ways. They can't say they carefully evaluated this matter because they don't want to have to live up to the truth, which is they shot first and asked questions later, because counsels have articulated, if you have time to evaluate the matter, you have time to say, freeze, police, stop, drop your weapon. He could have did any number of those things, but he didn't do any of them. He shot a kid who was one of the best we had to offer, snuffed his life out far too early, unnecessarily. And all he had to do was follow his training, follow the policies if he had it. And the police department and the mall need to make sure police officers are trained properly before they invite them to interact with the public in what everybody knows is going to be a very populated, crowded situation where officers' training and the following of procedure are the most important thing with dealing with crowds like that. This lawsuit is for change, and we pray that that change happens next week so that we don't see another tragic killing of an innocent young person. Before his parents come forward, you will hear from Ms. Tara Foster with the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Ms. Foster.
Good morning. I'm Tara Foster, Political Action Chair and Executive Committee member of the Alabama State Conference of the NAACP. I'm here on behalf of our president, Bernard Simulton, who sends his regrets. I will read to you a statement from President Simulton, and then at the end, I will follow it up with a very brief comment. We join today, a year after EJ Bradford's death, with his family, Attorney Benjamin Crump, and other advocates for justice and equality. We are here today to still demand justice for the wrongful death of EJ. We're here to demand the release of full documentation of the video and other pertinent information in this case. The family and the public deserve the full release of the details that led to EJ's death. The Hoover police officer shot and killed EJ is still on the streets and has not been held to account for his actions, while the parents have to live each day with this pain and emotion. As they walk around each day and look at people on the street, they probably ask themselves, is this person or that person the one that killed their son? Despite making up only 2% of the U.S. population, African American males between the ages of 15 and 34 comprised of more than 15% of all deaths logged in 2015 by police. The rate of police-involved death was 5 times higher than that of white men of the same age. This morning, we asked the question to the police officer who shot and killed EJ, the same question we asked months ago. Was shooting EJ the only choice you had? Did you have to shoot him 3 times in the back? The NAACP will continue to fight and demand justice for EJ and for those who fall victim from those who are sworn to serve and protect us. We ask God's blessing on EJ's family during this time of year. I ask you to prick your consciousness and ask yourself, why is it that it seems that there is no value placed on the lives of African American men? People ask us, why do you fight? Well, wouldn't you want someone to fight for you if it was your son or daughter?
Amen.
We will continue this fight because we believe this is a fight worth having.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Foster. And I know at the end of the press conference, we will announce a memorial that the family and the community are planning for this evening. And I know there are events next week in connection with the Hoover Mall and the community to remember EJ Bradford in a meaningful way so that his life is not simply forgotten. Things that his mother and father are here today to say that we had a son. His name was Emantic Bradford Jr. and he existed and he was special and he was God's child, and that is painful, but we're here standing for him and his legacy because he can no longer speak for himself. They're the voices for their child. And you all understand how difficult this is because you expect your children to bury you, not you to bury your children. So I applaud their conviction and honoring their son's legacy. You will now hear from Miss April Pipkin and then from Mr. EJ Bradford Sr.
Good morning. This time last year, the Pipkins and Bradford family had suffered a great loss. And this lawsuit is to bring change so that no one has to go through this. And it is my God-given duty to stand up and fight for what's right. Make no mistake about it. This family is going to stand strong, and we're going to fight every step of the way. We will not back down. We will not take one step back.
Amen. 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 Yes. Mr. EJ Bradford Sr.
It's been a long, hard journey. First of all, I'd like to thank the Birmingham Police Department, my family and co-workers at the Birmingham City Jail, St. Clair, Springfield County High Schools, Vincent High School basketball coach, Tuscaloosa County High School coach, Thompson's former coach, he's at Ramsey now. I'd like to thank them, and Carver's basketball coaches who just have supported me during this hard time. It's not easy for me. I'm not working anymore, retired from the police department, and it's a hard pill for me to swallow. I think about my son every day. I think about all the times that I look out the window, I know he coming, and when I was sick with cancer, it was just a bad blow. This is unacceptable by any means for every family across the country. And when you lose a child in this manner, it's when you're sworn to protect and serve, that's what you need to do. You never gave my son a warning. You know, you just assume and assess the situation in a bad way. Training, that comes from Hoover. That's not how you train, and that's not how you're supposed to react. The whole thing is the way it went down. We got to find out on Facebook. Then you come forth with a half-cocked apology downtown, you know. And I'm going to say this to the whole city of Hoover, a whole city council. All of you got blood on your hands. And if it's time for election, Hoover, if you want your city so-called to be great, it get rid of your leaders. On down to your chief, on down to your mayor, on down to your council president, culpable in this. I have nothing but mad contempt for all of them. I'm a hateful father right now, and I'm going to say that because I am hateful. I haven't had time to vent because I haven't had time to get it out. And it's hard for me. I had to deal with this pain every day. It ain't easy when you don't see your child, man. It ain't easy when you don't talk to your boy. I knew my son was a good kid. His mother knew. My wife knew. His grandmama. She hurts because she helped us raise him. If it's Mr. JJ, it'll be a different ball game. Because his uncles always had their hands on him and they helped us raise him. No parent needs to go through this, what we going through. This is a painful situation. And it's painful for me. And as a father, I know what it feels like. I had my grandparents and I had my uncles. But I helped raise my son like a man. Never had to worry about him wanting, never needed. Never had to worry about his mama calling me in the middle of the night asking where he at. Or if she needed me to come, I'm coming. That night that it happened, after my second chemo, I'm sick. But Hoover didn't have the decency or respect enough to call my home or call the Birmingham Police Department and let them know, hey, we got one of your officers' kids out here that's been murdered, a shot. You know, because somebody to his house, they didn't do that. I had to call you back at 3:45 in the morning, and then you get on the phone and say, I got to call the county. The county did their job. You rushed the judgment. And the sad part about it, when they had that press conference talking about, and somebody asked me, did you get the right shooter? You said you're 100% sure. You're 100% like a nut. Because you messed around and my son's name said he had something to do with it. Not mine. Anybody know me, know my son? That's not fair. We took his cell phone. We still hadn't got his property back. I look out across places out of bed. People always giving prayers and uplifting us. I can say this. It didn't change me in so many ways. Because the hate that I got inside of me right now, I'm not going to unleash it right now. Because I got people praying for me all the time. Including my doctor at St. Vincent. Whenever I go see him, he always praying with me and talking to me. And Dr. Bell at the VA. So when you look at it as a parent, this is not something that we want to see happen to anybody else's child. Across black, brown, Puerto Rican, blue, don't make a difference. Anybody of color don't need to go through this. No parent need to experience this ever again. To the lawmakers and legislation, we need to change these laws. You need to make sure all officers across this country, across this nation, are properly trained in hostage and stuff that's going on. Mass shootings. Look at stuff going on across the country now. The schools. We got to change this. But when you gun someone down like that, in Texas, it took a stand on prosecuting these officers unjustly, then we need to take a stand to Alabama. We got to change.
Thank you, Mr. Bradford, Ms. Pipkins. Obviously, very emotional. As Dr. Martin Luther King said, there can be no great disappointment without first having great love and great respect. And Mr. Bradford is not just disappointed, he's heartbroken because he was a police officer. He also served this country. I mean, he put his life on the line so Americans, his son EJ Bradford, could get equal justice. He does not believe the Attorney General of Alabama believes the Declaration of Independence like he does, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equally, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that amongst them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, Hoover, Mayor, the Attorney General of Alabama, that means black and brown people too. That means EJ Bradford Jr. too. And so that's why they're so disappointed and heartbroken a year later. We take questions. Just understand this father and this mother, somebody who worked with the police department, they see all the time young white men who have guns or weapons are confirmed mass murderers. The police give them plenty of time. Issue all kind of verbal commands. When you think about the Parkland shooting in Florida, he shot 34 people, killing 17 of them. The police followed him for hours. And they took a Waffle House shooter in Tennessee, killed 4 people. The police followed him in the woods, took him alive. Dylan Roof, the white supremacist, the young man in the church in South Carolina, killed 9 of the most innocent people you would ever find. In fact, he said in an interview he felt bad about killing them, Mr. Bradford, because they were so nice to him. They followed him across state lines. And not only did they take him alive, but they took him to Burger King for burger and fries. It just sends the message that white men are allowed to have the Second Amendment rights, but black men, even if you have a cell phone and you move the wrong way, they shoot first and ask questions later. White men are arrested and protected while black men are shot and killed. Alabama, that's not right. You're better than this. You're better than this. Before we take questions, Mr. Carlos Chavez is going to announce a memorial event. You want to announce that?
We're hosting a memorial service on tonight. It has been a year, and this family is still hurting. So as a community, we decided that we knew that we had to do something. Something had to be done to help this family that still hasn't received justice, especially with no video from the police department being released, and also the officer's name hasn't been released publicly to where we know what's going on. So tonight we're honoring EJ Bradford as part of a celebration of life at 6 p.m. at the Entertainment Center at 2700 16th Street North. Tonight's event will include the community feeding the family of EJ Bradford as part of a Thanksgiving meal since he was murdered on Thanksgiving night. We want them to not be able to not have to share this Thanksgiving holiday alone. So we are having a few speakers that will speak, a few singers, and also a special presentation for the family, and an award given in honor of EJ Bradford to someone in the family whom they deem as someone who has shown communities. So that is tonight at 6 p.m.
Thank you so much, Carlos. And I know Attorney Barganier and I talked this morning. The police claim they finished all the investigations. So why haven't they released the mall surveillance video and all the body camera video, everything to the public? Why haven't they given it to you all in the media? Attorney Barganier, why haven't they released the video of the police officer after he shot and killed EJ Bradford, giving a fist pump to his fellow officer right there in the mall? Is it because they know once they release that video, the truth, the whole truth, will finally be revealed, and they're trying to sweep that under the rug hoping that you forget about it, hoping you forget about EJ Bradford Jr. But we won't forget. EJ Bradford, life mattered, and we're here to defend it. We will take your questions.
You said you plan to file that lawsuit today?
Yes, Rodney, you want to take that?
Yes, it'll be filed today, this afternoon. Here, right here, just a block or so from here in the federal courthouse. Yes.
Specifically against the Hoover Police Department?
Against the city of Hoover, yes.
Is it
Which
a
acts, the
wrongful
police
death?
department acts under the city of Hoover, yes.
Yeah.
It's going to be against John Doe, the unnamed officer, which will...
Hold on. Come talk to the mic if y'all would.
Sorry.
Okay.
It will name John Doe as the very first defendant, as it should. John Doe is identified in the complaint that was drafted as the shooter in this case. We have a right to identify him once we're in litigation and to name him within the litigation. There will be a subsequent amendment because once we file, we will serve discovery requests to obtain the identity. And at that time, the department will have to produce his name. So it'll be John Doe and then the city.
In addition, when you file a lawsuit in a federal court in particular, we have what we call initial disclosures. The initial disclosures, you must give every identity of witnesses who have information about this incident. Without a doubt, one of those people will be that officer who did the shooting. And that name will come out and be public at that time.
Rodney, is this a wrongful death suit?
Absolutely. It will have federal claims in addition to state law claims.
1983 claims as well.
Right, 42 U.S.C. 1983, which is your unreasonable search and seizure, unreasonable force, and combined with excessive use of force. And under that, you can bring wrongful death actions federally.
What was the federal review also completed in August, and have they told you what?
It was.
What was the result of that?
They again rubber stamped what the Birmingham Police Department did. This family feels
Steve Marshall.
that the federal Department of Justice declined to bring charges as well, and rubber stamp in many ways what the Hoover Police Department did. And it's just outrageous still to not just this family but the community, and especially the African American community, that the DA that they elected was not allowed to present this case to a grand jury, to be able to have a jury of the peace. EJ Bradford and April Pipkin here in this county decide the fate of the officer who worked in the county where they reside. The power was usurped by this Attorney General, and we think that was intentional, just like we believe it's intentional why they won't release these videos.
If I can, just to expand on your question, as far as as far as the claims that are going to be asserted. So it would properly be referred to as a federal civil rights lawsuit. It is asserted pursuant to, as Rodney indicated, 42 U.S.C. 1983, which is the Civil Rights Act. It will assert violations of the Fourth Amendment for the unlawful seizure, that being the shooting, and the excessive force, that also being the fatal shooting. And it will assert under the 4th and 14th what we call a Monell claim, a claim against the city, because their policies, practices, and customs were the moving force that caused this incident. And then it will, in addition, assert a state law wrongful death claim.
Okay. Any other questions?
I got a question. Doesn't Alabama have a law that limits the liability of cities in these countries?
Yeah, well, we're in federal. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, as it relates to what we call tort claims, which are big state law claims, but when it comes to federal claims, there's no cap.
So what about the Galleria Mall being a...
We will hold any and all defendants.
They were the ones hiring.
We will hold any and all defendants accountable for the wrongful death of EJ Bradford Jr. We will look at every proximate cause that led up to his death. And so we have discovery, and we're going to go through that discovery. And as Attorney Jacob said, defendants will be identified and added as the discovery reveals them to be. What we're seeking is whole justice. equal justice. We don't want 3/5 justice. We don't want second-class citizen justice. We want whole justice for EJ Bradford. We want whole justice for April Pipkin's son, her firstborn. We want whole justice for Mr. EJ Bradford Sr.'s son. And that means not only coming about to have the change that's so needed in this situation, as his parents both talked about, this is a lawsuit for change, but it is also a wrongful death lawsuit to fully compensate them for what they lost. And what they lost is invaluable.
And a change to make sure this doesn't happen again to any other child.
Well, you want to say that?
You got a huge mall.
No,
you got a lot of folks that's coming out there to shop. And if you don't have a change in policy, who's to say this won't happen again while your child is out there shopping, or my child? So those kind of things that we're looking to change as well.
Okay, hold on. April Pipkins wants to say something right quick. Okay, go ahead, April. Take your time.
As Attorney Bargnell said, it's time for change. We've been seeing this all across the country over and over again. It's enough. Nobody. I would hate to see anybody else go through this, because this is not a walk in the park. It's time for change. God is not pleased with this. He is not pleased with this.
Okay.
To address the specific to address the specific policy and training questions that you had, though, there are specific deficiencies that I have noted in those policies. So number one, it needs to be clear that de-escalation is the first step in any of these situations. Right. It needs to be clear in policy that an officer is not permitted to assume a threat, but rather must verify a threat. And that's a very important point that is not clear in the policies. The policies and practices must meet national don't at this time. It needs to be clear to reference actual federal and state law that applies. It needs to be clear to guide officers what factors they may consider when using excessive force, such as the mere fact that somebody is holding a weapon in the state of Alabama is not evidence of criminal wrongdoing or exclusive dispositive evidence of wrongdoing, because of the fact that this state permits the lawful possession of weapons. There's very little guidance in these policies for the officers to move forward, and those policies are supposed to be exactly that, the rules of engagement, and the rules were not clear.
It's very troubling on so many levels that they seem to always assume when a person of color has the interaction with the cops that they can use deadly force. That's not the same assumption they give to white men with guns, even when they've killed people.
What's the Supreme Court's position on that?
We'll talk about that. We're going to have Frank Matthews say a brief word.
Outcast Voters League, we are not necessarily per se a parlay to this lawsuit, because the protest that we put on for a number of days was a lawsuit filed by the footsteps of activists that caused 17 to 30 million losses in revenue. So the lawsuit of the activists have spoken. We will speak again during this Christmas holiday season. We will stage another protest. Carlos Chavis Jr. is barred from leading the protest. File our lawsuit of our 10 feet of standing, assembling where we want, when we want to, however, how long we want. So again, our protest will convene again in commendation and recognition of this tragic murder, vicious, savage murder, where individuals with pump fingers and serenade someone, admit their mistake, but not admit it to the family, and totally disrespected this family. So again, count on another deficit in your revenue appreciation, because we will once again convene a time of protest in the Galleria.
Thank you, Frank. And before Attorney Lee comes forward, it is important to know that the community has First Amendment rights too. And if you feel an injustice was done, we implore you to exercise those First Amendment rights to send a message that our children's lives matter too, that Black lives matter. Hoover.
Just real quickly, as earlier I stated that I was a police officer with Birmingham for 13 years, and Attorney Jacob also was a police officer for about 3 years. There are a lot of good police officers that work the streets of Birmingham and all over the country, but there are certain individuals that should not be police officers. There are certain individuals that do not have the temperament to be a police officer. You cannot be reckless and you cannot be afraid when you're a policing. You have to have discernment. You have to have a certain amount of discipline when you're carrying a gun and you have the ability to take someone's life. So this is not an indictment with regards to all of the police officers that serve and protect us. We actually need them, and we give honor to those that are doing the right thing. However, there are some that need not be police officers, and they need to screen their police officers prior to them getting out and having a gun or weapon on their sides before they allow them to work, especially in a situation, all setting, during a Christmas or Thanksgiving holiday. I just wanted to make that clear. This is not an indictment against all police officers all over the nation. It is not.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, we thank you and we'll keep you informed. The lawsuit will be available by our media representatives to distribute to the media this afternoon.